We recap the battle between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask during OTAs and tell you all the good that countered a few unflattering videos that circulated on Twitter. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live Friday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. And don't forget, you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, joined by my freshly faded co-host, Mr. David Harrison. He is at DHarrison82, both credentialed media members covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. David is over at Sports Illustrated's BucsGameDay.com, part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. And we are here with you every Monday through Friday. Kind of, more on that later, along with our everydayers. As always, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show.
And on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, brought to you by FanDuel, we're going to talk about some wise words from J.J. Watt. They're going to be interesting, and we've definitely got some thoughts on those. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers players pick the NBA Finals. We'll talk about who they're picking and why many of them are wrong. But first, this week wrapped up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers OTA periods, the first two portions of phase 3 of the offseason program. The next phase or portion of phase 3 comes next week with the mandatory minicamp, and then it's nothing, nada, zilch. Nothing's happening until training camp unless it's bad news. Maybe a re-signing. I don't think so, but maybe a re-signing.
There could be a contract extension. Maybe
there could be.
More than likely, it's bad news.
Typically, this is DUI season. Let's just be honest. That's typically, if there's news, it's usually like DUI news. So we almost kind of don't want news. This is when sports reporters like to go on vacation. But before we can go on vacation, we got to talk OTA recap notes. And we're talking about the biggest story that's going on during OTAs. It's going to be the biggest story all offseason, all through training camp until there is a decision made. And of course, that is the battle between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask for the quarterback position. Whether you, James, myself, Trevor Sikkema, Pewter Report, Evan Klosky, doesn't matter whether anybody actually believes this thing is a true competition or there's even an option that or a world where Kyle Trask wins this thing. The Buccaneers are saying that it is a battle, and honestly, they're sharing reps. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask are sharing reps during OTA, so the Buccaneers are running this thing as a battle, and I think because of that, it needs to be taken that in that light. So we're going to talk about both these quarterbacks, what they've done well from what we've seen. And real quick, a big thank you, a big shout out to our guy, Logan Robinson of BucsGameDay.com. He is the BucsGameDay.com guy on the ground in Tampa, as our everydayers know. James and I are not located in Tampa, so unfortunately we can't be there every day for OTAs, but Logan is on the ground sharing his notes, his observations, and we trust his eyes and everything. So we're going to share some of these things that are happening here during the OTA session. First and foremost, Baker Mayfield is the first quarterback on the field during these practice sessions. And I think that is important, right? It doesn't mean he's going to win, slam dunk to win, but I think it is important because your starting quarterback is expected to do what on your offense? Set the tone, right? So Baker Mayfield is the first quarterback on the field. He is the guy that they're expecting to set the tone for the offense. So I think that does bear some weight. Not saying to crown Baker yet, but I think it does bear some weight. Now, some Baker Mayfield highlights that we got from Logan James. During one practice, Mayfield hit a 60-yard touchdown, and this is a quote from Logan, quote, "throw on the money," end quote, an on-the-money throw. So I know what Twitter says, but there's also some really good throws going on out there, out in one buck in the end zone to wide receiver Tay Barber. Mayfield also hit Trey Palmer at one point on the sideline. A very solid ball from Baker Mayfield, but also a very nice grab by Trey Palmer. Again, if you didn't see the Trevor Sikkema episode, every day, you already know this. Trevor kind of talked me down from my Kenny Bell PTSD. We'll see how that continues to develop through the offseason and preseason. but Trey Palmer getting involved there in that play from Baker Mayfield. And then Baker dropped a ball over the middle linebacker, off-ball linebacker to connect downfield with Trey Palmer. So once again, an on-the-money throw from Baker Mayfield, this time over the middle linebacker's head. You love to see it. Baker also rushed for a touchdown on the right side in a goal line drill. That's cool. Nobody can hit you, though. So it's like, all right, it's not as cool as it could be. It's almost as cool as like the Miami Heat being in the NBA Finals, but not actually winning a game.
Wow. Shots fired early on. Look, a couple of takeaways from the Baker highlights. So it's nice to see the connection with Trey Palmer early, but it's not. That has more to do with Trey Palmer, in my opinion, than it has to do with Baker Mayfield, because as we've talked about numerous times, our everydayers know there's not a lot of depth at wide receiver. Once you get past Mike, Chris, and Russell Gage, the rest of the wide receiver room is wide open. So you're looking for that guy that's going to step up and assert himself as a mainstay in the wide receiver room, in the rotation, to get on the field come the regular season. Trey Palmer early on looks like he's got a leg up in that. We're going to talk about another wide receiver here in a little bit that Logan is a big fan of. He talked about it when he was on with me just a couple of weeks ago. But a couple of other quick takeaways: the deep ball, the sideline ball, the over the defender placement, all of that is really encouraging. Again, we saw the video on Twitter that started to go viral of these guys missing passes to tight ends and all that. That's a very small sample size of what actually happened. And nobody wants to post the good videos. It's more fun to post the bad videos because they get the clicks, they get the retweets, they get the quote tweets. Real quick on that. One of these viral videos going around was actually from Logan. And it's funny because it was actually, I don't want to say stolen, but somebody else tweeted the video. You know how you can do that? You can tweet the video, not retweet the tweet, right? He tweeted the video, and that actually is the tweet that got picked up. So a lot of people are crediting this other guy for the video. It's actually Logan's video. And truth be told, he didn't even it didn't even dawn on him like there are really bad throws in here. He's just like, hey guys, look, the quarterbacks are warming up. That was literally his only intention. He didn't even realize that there was like these really bad throws in there. He's just like, hey guys, we're getting started. And that's what it's kind of turned into. So anyway, I digress. Yeah, well, and my last thing about Baker is the underrated mobility that he kind of put on display. And as you said, there's no pads, there's no hitting, so you kind of take it with a grain of salt. But it doesn't matter if it's Baker, it doesn't matter if it's Kyle. That's going to be a facet of the quarterback's game that we haven't seen over the course of the last 3 years. Yeah, it was fun when Tom Brady ran, but everybody also held their breath because he's 40 plus years old running with a football. So that's going to be something that's probably integrated a little bit more into the offense, even on just boots, just getting outside the pocket, extending the play a little bit. So it's nice to see that early on. But let's talk about Kyle Trask for a little bit and some Kyle Trask highlights from our buddy Logan, who was on the ground. Now, he had as Logan put it, gorgeous 50-yard bomb in stride for a touchdown with tight end Tanner Taula. This is a guy from Illinois State trying to fight to make the team. He's going to make his bread and butter if he can play special teams because of the 3 tight ends they already have in Kieft, Otten, and Durham. But again, it's nice to see him get involved, make a nice catch in stride on a nice pass from Kyle Trask. Raheem Jarrett, who's the other wide receiver I said we were going to talk about. Logan is a huge fan. This guy has stepped up quite a bit in OTAs, but he had a solid one-handed grab going to the sideline from Trask. He basically saved the ball from going out of bounds with one of those highlight reel style catches. And then the pass to Kurt Warner's son, Cade, for a touchdown. So Trask with some nice throws of his own during this duel.
Yeah, look, and let's not oversell or undersell, rather. Let's not undersell the sideline throw that would have gone or could have gone out of bounds, because last year that throw probably would have gone out of bounds. In fact, my guy Caleb caught it because it went out of bounds. So this year it's not out of bounds. Raheem Jarrett is catching it. That's exactly what you want from your quarterback. So that's progression, I say, a little bit in jest. But look, you really love hearing about the Kyle Trask deep ball, especially to a tight end, because let's be honest, like tight end deep balls, usually those require a little bit more touch because those guys don't typically run as fast as your average receiver. And as a quarterback, you're kind of like, boom, I want to hit this deep ball, all the motion, all the power, all the strength, all the momentum. And so to be able to kind of show restraint in that throw and hit that guy down the field, shows a little bit of maturity, growth, and ability. Raheem Jarrett, multiple mentions on Logan's appearances here on the Locked On Bucs podcast here the last couple of weeks. So you love hearing that as well. You hearing these young receivers really starting to make a name for himself. And Cade Warner is also a guy who's getting multiple mentions across shows, across platforms, and on social media. So, I mean, a lot of good young receiver play early in OTAs. Again, I'm not saying go pick up Cade Warner for your fantasy roster or anything like that, but you do like seeing this positivity and this growth from the quarterbacks and the receivers this early on.
And it is also worth mentioning that John Wolford had a highlight reel pass to Kalen Geiger for a touchdown. The catch by Geiger was more impressive than the throw, but Wolford, Geiger, touchdown. You love to see it. Bucs by 30. JJ Watt sends a strong message to media and fans alike. That's coming up next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's a 2, a 5, a 0, and a 0, then a decimal, then a 0, 0. And that is $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Now, after a decisive Game 1 victory, the Denver Nuggets are 8.5-point favorites to win Game 2 and minus 800 to win the title. If the Heat are going to make this a series, Jimmy Butler needs to look more like Jamichael Batorton, as my son likes to call him. But there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. It's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Thanks for making Locked On Bucs first listen or your first view today and every day. Thanks for letting us take you into the weekend. I wish I had the Jimmy Butler gif. You know the one I'm talking about where he makes the face, like the what face for that nickname. I wish I knew that was coming. I could have created the gif. I could have put it up, uploaded it for the show, and had it. Since I didn't have it, we'll just play this one in honor of your son.
We'll talk about it. Playoffs.
So we'll just play that sound for him. I don't know. It's as confusing as the nickname. So good effort by young Beckett though. My shout out, my best to Beckett. JJ Watt sent out a video on Twitter. JJ Watt is a civilian. He is a fan just like you, just like us. He is no longer a member of an NFL franchise. Caution people to ease off some criticisms during OTAs, especially criticisms of rookies, James. And here is what JJ had to say. Let me take our rude banner off of JJ's title there. JJ Watt, former NFL defensive end, quote, rookie has rough practice in his first week of OTAs. Yeah, that's called being a rookie. It's called first week of OTAs. I had rough practices every single year of my 12 years. I've had rough games. I've had multiple rough games like S dash 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 dash. That's a cuss word. Hard. It's the National Football League. Like, this is part of the reason why it's hard for guys to develop, because we're judging guys on every single individual rep every single day. We're posting videos online, Logan, of practice reps and guys working on their craft and guys trying to do new things. It's part of the reason guys are scared to try new pass rush moves and one-on-ones in practice, which is when you should be working on your pass rush moves, because they're scared someone is going to film it and put it online, and because they got blocked, now they look like an idiot. Let guys develop, let guys grow. I understand this is a business. We're paid millions of dollars and you expect greatness right out of the gate of every single guy. Let's let guys develop. Let's let guys get some practice under their belts. Let's let guys get into the league and let them grow as player, get some NFL coaching. We don't need to be another expletive all over guys in their first week in the National Football League. Just let them grow. James, stern words from a guy who's walked the walk, talked the talk, been through the practices, developed into a potentially Hall of Fame player. I guess that's a discussion for another day. What do you think of JJ's sage advice to the public?
First and foremost, first ballot Hall of Famer, JJ Watt. I don't think there's any doubt about that. This is probably one of the best player or former player videos I have ever seen, because this is a guy that's coming to everyone. He's coming at you and me. He's coming at the people in our YouTube live chat right now. He's coming at the people on Twitter. He's coming at everyone and saying, look, it's the first week of OTAs. And Evan even kind of talked about this on our WTSP Wednesday episode earlier this week, where it's like, stop raking Baker and Kyle over the coals because there's a viral video of some bad passes online. It's the first week of OTAs. You don't know what they're working on. You don't know if they're trying a different style of footwork that the coach is stressing, and they're trying to get their own timing down, let alone timing with guys that they haven't played with before. And look, I'll admit it. I've been unfairly hard on Kyle Trask with some of my jokes and some of my tongue-in-cheek comments. And, I've based some of that off of what I have seen in person, and I've based some of it off of what I project him to be. But it's also been slightly unfair of me to basically sit here and say for the last 2 months that there's no doubt in my mind, there's no way that Baker Mayfield is not the starting quarterback, because it could happen. And so, things like that and ripping on some of these guys during OTAs when they're out there in shorts and t-shirts, they're learning a new offensive system. Some of these guys are learning the NFL world for the first time, and to get ripped up and down on social media just flat out isn't fair.
Preach. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I agree with all of that. I agree with everything you just said. I agree with everything that JJ just said. You know what I mean? And honestly, it's a creation of its own master, right? I don't even know if I just said that right, but basically, the more popular the NFL gets, the more people want to talk about what is happening. The more people talk about what is happening, the more pressure there is to have an opinion. The more people have opinions, the more other people want to have opinions and counter opinions, and that's what essentially leads us to where we are today. I did an episode for Locked On Commanders, and bear with me here. Don't stop listening. I did an episode for Locked On Commanders. I had a question from a viewer who said, what should we really be looking for from OTAs, and what should we really take away from OTAs? And this essentially hits that nail right on the head. It's a lot of fun to talk about the good, and you should talk about the good, but the bad, all of the bad should really be taken with a huge grain of salt, especially when you're talking about specific parts of the game, right? Like there are some more notes that Logan shared with us of guys like getting sacks, right? Why don't we share those notes? Well, we don't share those notes because what we don't want you to hear is Luke Gedeke gave up 3 sacks in OTAs. You know why? Because they're not wearing pads. They're also not allowed to fully contact each other, which means when Yaya Diaby decides, I'm going to go extra full speed on this rep, and I'm going to hit Luke Gedeke with a rip and a spin and a shimmy shuffle and get to Baker Mayfield, guess what Luke Gedeke can do? He can do this. No, Yaya, don't make me look bad. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that's all he can do. So we talk about sacks and stuff like the only thing you really take from like trench play, for example, is the get off. Like how quickly is the offensive line getting into pass sets on time together? That's beautiful. Once they get into their pass set, you can't, like anything after that is really not something you should be analyzing, right? Defensive ends, defensive tackles. How quickly did they get off the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball? Are they getting off together? Who's coming off the fastest? Those kinds of things. Beyond that, you shouldn't really put a whole lot of stock in it. These passes, like we love the Trey Palmer catches. We love the Raheem Jarrett passes, right? But why do we highlight the ball placement? Why do we highlight the sideline grab? Why do we highlight the athletic catch? Because DBs cannot impact these receivers right now, right? So we're not coming in here saying, oh man, Trey Palmer mossed Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean's probably fallen off this year, because that's not realistic. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what JJ is talking about. Highlight the good. Yes, the ball placement over the middle linebacker, beautiful. Middle linebacker did nothing wrong. Middle linebacker's in phase. He's in coverage. He's on the hip. The ball's just put in a better place. Accentuate the positive, because those positives are what they're going to build on. But don't sit here and criticize. You know, I don't even remember honestly who the middle linebacker is that ball went over, but that kind of proves the point. I don't need to sit here and say, who's that middle linebacker? Let me go on Locked On Bucs and say that guy gave up a reception in OTAs and he should have been on. No, because he is so limited in what he's capable of doing. So I think it's a really great message from JJ, and something that not just fans, like media, we need to remember that as well at times. And that's why I like bringing on people like Trevor, people like Brianna Dix. We brought them on. And if you everydayers, you've seen those interviews, and hopefully you noticed, I opened the door. We opened the door, and we have these people on, and we say, there's a narrative out here. we maybe have been too hard on Luke Gedeke, for example, with Brianna. And she told me why maybe I shouldn't be so hard on Brianna. I asked Trevor Sikkema the narrative of Devin White's actions on the locker room. What do you think of that impact, really? And he gave his answer. So we opened the door to also be corrected, because that's the only way to keep yourself grounded in your analysis.
Exactly. And it also is a big part of us striving to bring all of our listeners, all of our viewers, the best information possible. We can give you our opinions all day long. As fair as we might think that they are, other people are going to see things through a different lens, and the more conversation we can have, the better. So again, I just want to say that was an absolutely phenomenal video by JJ Watt. If you haven't watched it, it is up on Twitter, on his Twitter feed. It was just a little selfie video that he posted, but Rashad
that was not just some selfie video. Like, there was an angle. Like, he tested that. Like, he was he was in like deep thought. Like, it was a well done video. But no, the message is great. Absolutely.
He probably had 7 ring lights around him. Rashad White is among the many Buccaneers that broke David's heart on Thursday. That's coming up next on Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a live Friday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast and the Buccaneers social media team. Shout out to a friend of ours and friend of the show, Jill Beckman, are still crushing it. And on Thursday, they caught players coming out onto the field for practice and asked them who was going to win the NBA Finals. David, roll that beautiful bean footage.
Asking our players who is going to win the NBA Finals.
Denver Nuggets. Heat, baby. Come on, man. We got heat, man. Butler, come on, man. He's a dog. He's going to win it. Let's go.
Jimmy Butler in the Heat.
Oh, I got to go with the Nuggets, man. They've been playing great ball lately.
Who do you think's going to win the NBA Finals? No.
What is the NBA?
Heat. Got him. Yeah.
Oh, the Heat, man. We're going for the whole time team, man. I'm going with the Heat, man. We're going to go with the Heat. I like it, man. Jimmy Buckets all day, baby.
Shoot, the Heat. Because my boy Jimmy Buckets going to get it done. Has to.
Let's see. I'm going Miami. Jimmy. What do you say? Himmy Buckets?
I was not prepared for the prop that you have, David. Jimmy Buckets, Jamichael Batordan. A lot of love for the Miami Heat. But David, I have to ask, are you hereby denouncing Rashad White as your favorite Arizona Sun Devil because of the comments that he made in that video?
James, go ahead and take the rest of this episode off. Here's what I'm going to say about this video. First of all, Jill Beckman, you're one of my favorite people. I thoroughly enjoy seeing you. Every time I get to see you in Tampa, on the road, wherever it is. Thank you, G Vegas. You know how to do it. But let me understand something. The disrespect. First of all, these Denver Nuggets are made of gold, not chickens. Okay, Jill. I need some makeup for that disrespect. I am actually texting Jill later today to talk about that disrespect, because that's uncalled for. First of all. Second of all, Jimmy Buckets got 6 of them. 6 of them in game 1 out of 14 tries. Try Jimmy Bricklayer. And also Jimmy Buckets, not a real nickname, by the way. That's just a fancy way of saying what he does. Like, James, your name is James. I call you Jimmy. Jimmy Mike Speaker. Like, that's your nickname. I'm just churching up what you do for a living. That's not a nickname. I'm just saying what you're doing over here, right? David getting salty. Like, that's not a nickname. That's just what I'm doing today. Joker, that's a nickname, and it's got to fit. You know what I mean? You can't just call anybody, call Bam Adebayo Joker. It's like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Get a real nickname, first of all. I'm pretty sure Nikola Jokic had that many buckets in the first quarter. He actually didn't. He only had 2 more, but he also had like 12 more points. So, I mean, where's the buckets coming from if your nickname is Jimmy Buckets? And the last thing I'm going to say here, James, I don't have any hate for the young fella saying support the home team. Okay, home team love. I'm never going to hate home team love. Yusef from Phoenix, home team love during the Suns Nuggets series. Never going to hate him for that. So I don't hate the home team guy. But here's what I here's what I don't appreciate. This team thinks that they're fighting for a championship. That's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are out here doing, right? Why do we do this according to Bruce Arians, James? We do this to get the effing rings, right? That's why we do this. Shout out to Amazon for their one of their good series. Anyway, these guys want to win a championship. You got to replicate championship energy. So the fact that they're looking at the second place team in the NBA Finals for championship energy, that's concerning to me. That is concerning to me. And also, how many Super Bowl champions pick the Heat? How many number one overall picks pick the Nuggets? Game recognizes game. Success recognizes success. Two things I never thought would happen this offseason, James Yarcho. Me defending Baker Mayfield as much as I have, and me talking down to Jimmy Butler because I love that man. But dang it, the Buccaneers made me do it.
Well, I'm sure Jimmy's legs are tired from carrying the Heat for the first two series. And then Caleb Martin, or as Beckett has affectionately nicknamed him, Miami Mike Evans, he forgot that he had a game on Thursday night. Yeah, I understand you're upset, and I understand now that you hate Rashad White, and that is your prerogative. But you gotta respect what the Heat did. I mean, they were 6 minutes away from being eliminated in the play-in against the Chicago Bulls. And my boy Ayo Dosunmu, who did absolutely nothing in that series, but he's still my boy because, Illinois. And then they just mowed over everybody. Boston thought they were going to do something. They didn't. That was hilarious to me. But at the end of the day, I think my favorite part of that entire video was somebody saying, "What's an NBA?" Because that was hilarious to me.
It was Kokeef. Shout out to Kokeef. And yeah, no hate for that either.
Also, Jokic looks like Gibby from iCarly. Shout out to all of you that get that. All of you
plays
parents,
like a multi-time MVP, so I don't care what he looks like.
All of you parents that had to sit through iCarly, tell me that Jokic as a child didn't look like Gibby, because my son also pointed that out to me, and it's absolutely hilarious. The biggest takeaway I have from all of this, and maybe you're misconstruing the Bucs looking at the Heat, as you claim the number 2 team as inspiration. They should look at the Miami Heat as inspiration, because who gave the Miami Heat even the slightest chance to do what they've done?
Nobody.
So far, nobody's giving the Buccaneers a chance to do anything. The odds makers, even Trevor Sycamore was on Locked On Saints talking about the Saints are going to win the division. Tampa Bay Trey snatched the Tampa Bay away from his Twitter handle. He's just at Trey. So looking at the Miami Heat, looking at Jimmy Butler lifting that team up, looking at guys like Caleb Martin, who averaged like 6 points a game, all of a sudden be the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, despite who the trophy was handed to, and looking at these guys coming together as a team, defying the odds, and making their way to the NBA Finals is absolutely inspiring, and it's something that the Buccaneers can absolutely do. They are in a division that they have the talent to win, and then once you get in the playoffs, you just never know what can happen. So,
you kidding me? Playoffs? Playoffs?
With that, we are going to bid you all a fair adieu. Now, starting next week, the Locked On Bucs podcast will be 3 days a week. We will be coming at you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday each and every week until about the middle of July, when we will go back to the 5 days a week. But as David was talking about earlier, unless it's bad news, there's really no news. So we are dropping to 3 days a week for our off season. We will still have Evan Klosky coming in on WTSP Wednesdays. I know a lot of you enjoy his insights and his takes and his pantomiming Built Bar reads, which is quite entertaining. But yes, starting next week, 3 days a week for the Locked On Bucs podcast for the month of June and a little bit into July. Adjust your listening schedules accordingly. But we want to thank each and every one of you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day, and a special shout out to all of our everydayers. If you have ideas, thoughts, topics, concerns, anything at all, of course, you can email us at lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or slide into the DMs at lockedonbucks on Twitter. Check out everything that David is doing over at bucksgameday.com. Check out my work at bucksnation.com. And of course, follow everything on Twitter at lockedonbucks, at jarco_bucks, and at dharrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.